All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, January 7th. We have a 7-game NBA slate to dive into in today's video. Like we always do, I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within the game as well. But as always, guys, keep an eye down on the pinned comment of this video. That'll take you to my final plays, so I'm actually rolling with myself. If that does interest you, that'll be down in the pinned comment. Absolutely free. In terms of yesterday, we go 5-3. Units wise, it's more like a 4-2 night. Paul George, we split a half unit there, and then 2 of our wins were also a full unit split. It was the Raptors team total. So a very good night in terms of how we've been doing. I'm going to take the damn cha-ching because finally we have a winning night. It has been a little bit of a rough stretch, but you know what? We pulled it out yesterday. Even the Knicks team total over, I don't feel all that terrible about. We kind of jumped to it and took our chance and risked it, knowing Karl-Anthony Towns was questionable, and I figured if he was ruled in, we'd get worse odds and that type of thing. He ends up being ruled out, so we got kicked in the you-know-what's there. But Paul George being the only loser that I'm really kind of salty about, and you know what? We took that salt out, got the chisel out, and etched Paul George into a DNB graveyard headstone. Potential revival, January 13th, 2025. We've now taken Paul George like 3 times, and he's come up 1 bucket shy. So a lot of cases you may be like, well, he's done his job. He's been close. No. That is torture. He deserves to be on the DMB graveyard here. So Paul George, again, we'll revisit him. 1/13/2025 is when he's due to potentially come back. We'll see how he's doing, but he is an addition to the DNB graveyard, the do not bet list, essentially, right? But yeah, a positive night last night. We're glad. We're happy. The vibes are high. Unfortunately, we do have to get past a little bit of a bump in the road here. The ride of the day, dropping the womp womp. We had Speedy Gonzalez taking TJ McConnell over 8.5 points. TJ finishes with 8 points. We get hooked with the ride of the day. Unfortunately, it's an L. If you guys don't know what the ride of the day is, it is simple. It's one of the unique things we do here on the channel that I love doing and involving you guys. All you have to do is use that hashtag ride of the day, or ROTD, in the comments. I jump on board with one person's play, give you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. If you win, we continue to ride with your play. If you lose, we do get you do get the shout out. But we do got to talk about it, and you got to face the womp womp. I also post it on Twitter as well as the Guy Boston Sports site, so you get shout-outs there as well. My socials will be popping up right here in the bottom left of your screen. But guys, what do you say we jump into today's slate? Like I said, 7 games, some decent matchups, a couple that I'm not loving, but overall a fairly good slate. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button if you're like me, happy that we finally had a winning night. We were on a little bit of a cold stretch there, and I was worried that coming in the morning and flicking these lights on, at some point they might not turn on, but you know what? Good night last night. We're at least good for a little bit now. But let's jump into game number 1 here. We have Washington taking on Houston. We'll start with the injury report. There's tons of things to note here. So Jabari Smith Jr. already listed as out on the Houston side of things. Now Jalen Green listed as a game time decision. On the Washington side, you have Jordan Poole, Carrington, and Coulibaly all listed as game time decisions there. So obviously tons of injuries to monitor in this one. Even if these guys are out, or even if they're healthy, I do think that this is a lean, at least, to Washington. They're the clear-cut better team, obviously. In fact, I just had my power rankings come out on GuyBostonSports.com. If you want to go check that out, I put all 30 teams in, ranked them, aka like power rankings, and Houston actually came out based on my formulas and whatnot as the number 3 team. So I got to trust my formulas. But yeah, I think that this Houston team is obviously a very, very good team, sitting at 23-12 this season. They're one of those teams that's been good on the road and at home. So I think that it's very clear that Houston should be massive favorites in here. I like them minus the 11.5 points. I don't know if I necessarily get there like as confidently if Jalen Green's out. That's obviously going to be a huge scoring production decrease for them. And you throw in the fact that Alpi Sengun hasn't been all that tremendous in terms of scoring as of late. But overall, there's really no angle for me to get to Washington overall. Last time these two teams played was back in early November, and Houston won, I believe it was by was it 15 points? So they covered this line there, and that was in Houston. But overall, like I mentioned, Houston's been fine on the road as well, playing good basketball as of late. 6 of the last 10 games they've won. The only losses coming to the Celtics. They lost to OKC in there. They lost to Minnesota, and then someone else. Like, they have some excusable losses. You know what I mean? So give me Houston minus the points. Do we get there ourselves? It comes down to that Jalen Green news, and even still, even if he plays, that is a pretty damn big number. When you look at it from a total perspective, now we're sitting at 225. This is a spot in which I do think Houston's going to be able to score. They don't play with the fastest of pace, I get it, but two ships passing in the night type of a game here for me. Houston should be able to score in the paint against Washington. Houston likes to score in the paint, so it kind of fits their mold, right? Washington's going to shoot a decent amount of threes. Houston's been very good this season. Second fewest three-pointer points per game allowed against this team. So I think this is probably like a Washington team total under, potentially a Houston team total over. I would probably side with Houston team total over, given the fact that Washington at least does have the ability to up the tempo in a game like this, being over the last 10 games the fourth fastest paced team. Player prop-wise, I'd take a peek at Alfred Sengun, probably. He hasn't been all that tremendous, but like I mentioned, if we dive into the dashboard here, you could see right down here, this is where I'm targeting. You could see that Washington very bad against opponents in the paint. You could see 70% in terms of field goal percentage against, even in the paint outside of the restricted area, 46.5% against, and down here, last 7 games against centers, 26th in terms of preventing points. So I do think that this is a good spot for Alfred Sengun to be able to, compete here and kind of get back on track. He hasn't had the best run as of late. And by the way, guys, if you want access to that dashboard, we have now rolled it out over on the Guy Boston Sports site. You head over to GuyBostonSports.com, head right up here to the member section. You can log in, sign up, head over to the NBA dashboard. If you are logged in, you will see this. If you're not logged in, we can switch it to showing what it would look like without access. It's going to ask you, obviously, hey, you got to have a membership. Go look at this. So go ahead and check it out, guys. It's either $2.99 per month if you just want the NBA. If you want NFL and NBA dashboards, you're going to get it for $4.99 per month. Coming February, we're going to be replacing this aspect of the YouTube membership. So it's really, really cool. What I like about this is that you can download it. You can open it up in a PDF so you can kind of zoom and everything you want with it, which is really cool to have these dashboards each and every day. This is what I use predominantly for my research. If you guys don't know what these are, it's essentially me pulling and scraping other websites that I use, pulling them into one so I have it all in front of me. And then I provide it to you guys for obviously that small fee there. So yeah, go ahead and check it out. These things save people so much time. And it's very new if you guys do want to become a Guy Boston Sports member. It's not VIP picks or paying for picks. The picks are always going to be free. Do not worry. But some of these additional tools, things that take a lot of time, yes, $4.99 per month. All right, Charlotte's taking on Phoenix. Now, I know I say it a lot. You guys have been catching me in the comments. I say this about a ton of games, but this one is a weird one to me. Only a 4.5-point spread. It does make a little bit of sense here. Looks like Charlotte's going to be fairly healthy. LaMelo, Brandon Miller are good to go. So the starting lineup, Ball, Bridges, Brandon Miller, Green, Mark Williams, all looking like they're good. And Phoenix is on a back-to-back here. Now, Phoenix looked good with their new rotation, right? They were 2-point favorites yesterday and ended up winning by, I think it was like 10 points against Philly. So clap it up, good for them, but that was an injured Philly team, no Embiid, right? And Phoenix, like I mentioned, on a back-to-back. They played yesterday. Only 33% of their games they've covered in when on back-to-backs this season. And on the road, separately from back-to-backs, only 43.8% of games they have covered. And so I do look at this and I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, this is a bit interesting that Charlotte's only 4.5-point dogs, which, yes, if this is a bigger number, I'd be all over Charlotte. I actually think this is a fairly decent spot for them, but 4.5 points is tough. I'm still going to lean towards Charlotte because of, obviously, those trends with Phoenix, the fact that they haven't been doing all that well, right? And you throw in the fact that, Charlotte's going to chuck a bunch of threes. They've been chucking a bunch of threes. They've actually been making a decent amount of threes as well. They're not the most efficient offense, but, when they have their guys healthy, they're making some threes, and that's how you can kind of attack this Phoenix team right now. So far in the season, the 9th most points from 3 coming per game on the road, kind of middle of the pack. In the last 3, 19th. So yeah, the Charlotte team may be able to put up some points. Now, Phoenix is going to play slow. They've been playing slow. Does that limit the ability of Charlotte being able to go out there? Sure. But again, don't forget that we have 4.5 points in our back pocket. I'm not saying Charlotte is going to win this game. So even a low-scoring game, having those extra 5 points or 4 points could kind of do us well. So yeah, weirdly enough, I'm going to lean towards Charlotte plus the points here. Do I have the cojones to walk in the room, drop my cojones on the table and say, I'm betting Charlotte? I'm not sure. That still seems fairly risky because even though the Suns have been like up and down and kind of weird this season, in fact, in my power rankings, I had them way down in like 21st. You know what I mean? Charlotte obviously lower, but 21st. yes, they have been weird, but they still have Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and who knows, maybe they found something by having Bradley Beal and Nurkic come off the bench. It's kind of a weird spot, but I just can't really get to the Phoenix side of things. I think Charlotte should be able to dominate the perimeter, which is going to be super important for them, and Phoenix is on a back-to-back. So, yeah, give me the Hornets plus the 4.5 points. Total-wise, like I said, Phoenix may have the ability to slow this game down, but I still do like Charlotte's potential ability to up the pace, and throw in the fact that Phoenix may have some tired legs from being on the back-to-back, you know what I mean? So I'm going to lean slightly towards the over 222.5. My, I guess, other concern would be both of these teams are such under teams so far this year, you know what I mean? So it's not like I'm sitting here rooting for or saying that it's an absolute lock that we see an over. On the season, so far this year, to this line, so 222.5, right? 222.5, we've seen the Charlotte Hornets hit it under 62% of the times, and then I believe the Hornets, I want to say on the road, they've hit it under plenty as well. But the Suns were playing at a much faster pace early in the year. They've definitely slowed down with this new this new rotation, so that's worth keeping in mind. Player prop wise, I don't have much that I'm loving. Maybe some of the perimeter guys for Charlotte, but their lines are going to be pretty high. All right, Dallas taking on the Lakers. Dallas played against Memphis yesterday. They ended up losing by 15. I was very close to pulling the trigger on a Dallas first quarter play or Dallas first half play, which would have been good. They looked a lot better than, to some degree, I would say for the first, 12, maybe 18 minutes of that game looked pretty damn good. And then Memphis just said, you know what, let's turn it on. And shout out to everyone in the comments. They're like, no Ja Morant, no problem. This Memphis team eats at home, which they ended up doing, right? So Dallas on a back-to-back here, going up against the Lakers. This is a spot in which, yes, you can look at the Lakers and say, well, they've kind of been on I guess when you look at them on the road, some of their games have been pretty ugly. Like they lost to Houston, but they covered in that game, right? So it's like, yeah, and Houston, like I already mentioned, is one of those teams that I don't think people are putting them in the top 6, top 5 teams in the league, which I think they're starting to kind of prove that they should be or could be, even outside of standings, right? So this is a spot in which Dallas is super banged up. Should have started with this, like they were yesterday. No Kyrie Irving, no Luka Doncic. Now we have a new injury to add to the mix. Daniel Gafford, I think his latest is he's going to miss some time, so he's listed as doubtful in this one. Based on all those reports, I assume he's not playing. On the flip side for the Lakers, the only two things to note would be LeBron James and Anthony Davis listed as questionable, as I imagine they will be for the rest of the season. Lakers are on the road. I think that this one's going to be a spot in which the Lakers can keep this game. I would use the verbiage somewhat close and potentially win. Like, I don't think that there's any reason why this should be a spot for the Mavs to be laying 7, especially without their stars in Kyrie and Luka. And you throw into the fact that, well, the Dallas Mavericks, their defensive specialty is covering the perimeter, not the paint. The Lakers couldn't care less if you cover the perimeter well. They're going to try and get into the paint and score in the paint, which is something you can do against Dallas. So, yeah, I think this is a close one. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas still wins this game being at home in a low-scoring one, but 7 points in your back pocket seems like it's a good spot, if it's a close game. But overall, the Lakers should be able to score at will. So, is it a lot to lay for the Lakers on the road? Sure. Would I have put this more of like even a Dallas -1 spread? Sure. So kind of all over the place here, but I do think that this is a spot for the Lakers to dominate. But 7 points in your back pocket in a close scoring game at home. Dallas can still win the game because the Lakers are at home, but ultimately that point in the paint thing is everything that I just mentioned, all those little pieces, right? It's like those all amount to something this big, and then that points in the paint thing is something this big. So it's like, I got to trust my gut on this one. I like Dallas to win the game. I like to potentially win the game. I like them to be able to bounce back after yesterday, but they shouldn't be able to stop the Lakers in the paint, which is how Lakers win the game. Lakers minus the points. I know it took a long way to get there. I know that's a confusing way of breaking it down, but to me, it's just, I can't get over the fact that this Lakers team beats teams that you can score on in the paint, and Dallas is one of those teams. So, yeah, obviously, by the way, guys, if you can sense a sort of confidence level, it's like my brain's playing ping pong on this one. So, if you're on Dallas, I don't mean to talk you off of it. If you're on the Lakers, I don't even mean to, solidify your play. I don't think this makes its way into being a final play tonight, because obviously, the more and more I talk about it, the more and more I confuse myself, which, you know what? I'm stupid. It's just what it is. Total-wise at 218. If the Lakers can score well in the paint, I usually like them in games going over. So, yeah, I'm going to lean towards the over in this one. Maybe that's the way to play it, even if Dallas does kind of, play good defense, and the Lakers, maybe even they lock up on the perimeter, that type of thing. But I don't think this goes miles over. I think this is probably like a 224 finish, so very marginal, still somewhat of a low-scoring game, which is why Dallas may have a good spot at that +7. But if the Lakers can score, I don't mind them to push this up and over. Both teams potentially getting 110. Whew, that was a tough one to break down. My head hurts after that one. My head hurts, so why don't we talk about something easy real quick, which would be sleeper picks. They have a Jason Tatum square for tonight, 0.5 points, but that's not even the best deal that they're offering. I don't know how long they're going to be offering this play $5, get 55 back, but if you have not taken advantage of it, if you've seen it, you've thought about it, now is the time to do so, guys. Think about it. All you have to do is create an entry, play $5, they're going to give you $55. You're 11xing that $5 immediately. And what if you win that $5 entry, right? You still get that payout. Your sleeper bankroll could be looking pretty damn nice. This is for new customers only. If you do want to sign up, check out the link in the description as well as the pinned comment. I've been using Sleeper for over 2 years now. It is definitely one of my favorite DFS player prop apps out there. All you do is put 2 or more players into an entry. The more you get correct, the more you do get paid out. And what I like about them, speaking of that payout, is each and every player you put in there has its own multiplier. It doesn't follow a fixed payout structure like a lot of other apps out there. And they have alternate lines. They have more plays available and whatnot because of the multiplier. So go ahead and check out Sleeper, guys. That link is in the description as well as the pinned comment. Again, been using them for years. I do not think you'll regret it. And you're going to go out there and 11 extra money just by playing a $5 entry as new customers. Damn, go ahead and check out Sleeper Picks. That link will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. All right, let's jump back into these games here. Comment headache if you made it this far in the video, because I know if you're watching that, you're probably like eyes crossing watching me wire together that Lakers and Dallas play. But hopefully this one is a little bit easier because it is, at least in my brain, I'm a little bit more definitive in what I like here. We got the Pelicans taking on Minnesota. Now, New Orleans is at home. I'll give them a little bit of credit there, but Zion Williamson do potentially back in the lineup. DeJounte Murray also listed as questionable. I'll say this, and maybe I'm the idiot in the room here, right? I look at this and I see the Pelicans as, 5.5 point dogs. Like, that seems like it's a low number. I think people are overreacting to the fact that Zion is going to be back. If we know anything, and I don't have the updated restriction or anything like that, if we know anything about Zion coming back into the game, we know that he's going to be on a minutes restriction. Like, that's what he does, and it's what he always does overall, like when coming back, and he's been injured so much. So I don't put, at least for this one, right? I don't put too much weight into Zion potentially coming back. But again, maybe I am the idiot in the room not putting weight into that. But overall, this is still just such a Minnesota spot for me overall. Now, Minnesota's on a back-to-back here. They played the Clippers last night, but I think that's a quality win over the Clippers, right? Like, that was a back-and-forth game. They realistically didn't look all that great after the first quarter, separated themselves in the third quarter, and then went back and forth. I think they only won the fourth quarter by like 1 point, right? So, yeah, I think that was a really quality win at home. Do they have to travel to New Orleans? Sure, but this Minnesota team seemingly like they were kind of searching for one of those wins, right? They lose to OKC, somewhat of a close game. They lose to Boston, definitely a close game. And then they lose outright to Detroit as 6.5 point favorites. It was in Detroit. They finally got that win, and I've been saying all along that I think this Minnesota team is going to hit their stride. There's a couple teams. The Bucks and Minnesota are definitely two of those teams that I think hit their stride at some point. And Minnesota coming off of that win against the Clippers tells me that they could have a good game here against this Pelicans team. Now, if you don't just believe in they could have the momentum and stuff, why else do I like it? Well, you throw in the fact that Minnesota loves to shoot the 3-ball, right? This is the Pelicans team that is the 5th worst team in terms of preventing threes. They've been a little bit better as of late. You look at their last 3 games, and they are actually sitting as the 5th best. But then you dig a little bit deeper. Okay, they played Miami, and then they played Washington twice. Obviously, their defensive numbers are going to look pretty good over the last 3 games, right? So I don't put too much weight into it. Minnesota minus the 5.5 points. I think that they are able to score here on this Pelicans team, who, yes, they do actually play at a fast pace. So Minnesota, who hasn't really been the fastest team so far this year, I think that they'll be able to kind of up the tempo against the Pelicans team that does, in a sense, up the tempo. So I like Minnesota to put up a decent amount of points, win by 5.5 points or win by 6 points, and hit their team total over. You look at the last time they played, which was just about a week ago, the Pelicans won this game outright as well. So now you're throwing in the fact that you look, or was that last year, I believe? Was that January 2024? They didn't play recently, did they? But either way, last time they played, which was January, yeah, because Zion played in that game. So that was a year ago. The Pelicans smoked this Minnesota team. So hopefully they look at that and say, yeah, let's go out there and get some revenge in this spot as well. Minnesota all day long, definitely a strong chance of being a final play. If you couldn't tell, I'm pretty definitive about this one. In terms of where we have player props now, I do like the idea of Anthony Edwards being able to score on this team because, again, I want to target the perimeter. Guys that you would target would be Anthony Edwards, maybe Dante DiVincenzo, but this is a Pelicans team that also cannot really guard the paint, so you can't go wrong looking at a guy like, potentially Julius Randle or something like that as well. The one piece that I would give Zion credit for coming back is that is going to be a big body, and we know it's a big body, kind of clogging the lane. So I would probably still stick to taking a peek at guys on the outside and that type of a thing. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't sit here and tell you not to look at, a Julius Randle look as well, because yes, I'm focusing on the perimeter, but you look at the numbers here. The Pelicans really not all that great. Look at the dashboard here. Really not all that great at stopping the paint either. So this is their 3-point defense, and this is their paint defense. You know what I mean? Like they kind of stink at both of them. So, yeah, I don't mind the idea of looking at, Julius Randle, but you throw in the fact of the defense versus position. Look at this. Anthony Edwards, in terms of point guards, yes, he's not really the point guard, but he's going to have the ball and bring it up a lot. So get in the pseudo point guard role here. In terms of guards, third most threes allowed and most points allowed over the last 7 games. So guards, scoring-wise, should be able to attack them fairly well. All right, we got Utah taking on Atlanta. This Atlanta team has really been a hot and cold team. They go on a run, and then they go on a slide. This is part of their slide. They've been on the road now for 4 straight games. They beat Toronto, yippee-ki-yay, and then they lose to Denver. They got smoked by Denver. It was like nearly 20 points, right? They lose to the Lakers by 17, and then they get smoked by the Clippers. So this is a team that is definitely kind of in the crapper here. They're going up against Utah, who, yeah, that may be a good spot for Atlanta, but overall, this Utah team, might be looking okay. They've won 2 straight games against Miami and then Orlando. This Utah team is now at home. In terms of injuries, looks like we're not going to have Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, or Keontae George, but Lauri Markkanen could be getting the go here. No Jalen Johnson still for Atlanta, which is obviously a massive piece. I don't think this one's as simple as, just bet it and forget it. Atlanta's going to take this home. I'm actually going to look at Utah at home plus the 6.5 points. You think about the things that Atlanta can do well, which would be score in the paint. That's probably their advantage, but Utah should dominate the boards, right? They should also be able to keep up with Atlanta's pace, which I don't necessarily mind, which is obviously predicted here. The total's at 236.5. So yeah, I mean, if Atlanta gets going in the paint, then sure, they should be able to run away with this one, but they're missing Jalen Johnson, who's one of their best paint scorers, if not their best paint scorer. So yeah, I like Utah plus the 6.5 points. I think Atlanta can win this game and get back in the win column. Maybe they win by 3 or 4, but having 6.5 points there, I do think it's a good spot in which I don't really see where Atlanta totally defensively, trumps Utah. And you throw in the fact that Utah has been shooting a lot more threes. The name of the game so far this year is to shoot threes against Atlanta, and you can fare pretty well, right? So yeah, give me Utah plus the 6.5. I feel like we've taken a decent amount of underdogs today. At least Charlotte and Utah, maybe that's it. But this could be a decent spot. Now, I also don't mind a look at Lauri Markkanen kind of having a decent game. Again, he's a guy that can score from everywhere, but he also leads the team in both corner 3 attempts and above the break 3 attempts per game. You look at his points right now, it's sitting at 23.5. That's with all those guys out. I understand that, so I'd probably pivot to a potential plus money play here of his over 3s. It's at plus 120 right now over on 365, plus 115 on DraftKings. He needs to make 4 of them to cash it, but like I mentioned, he's going to be taking an uptick of quantity. I don't necessarily know exactly on that Atlanta team who's going to stop him. Is it going to be the rookie Rashishir, or whatever his name is? Are they going to put Dyson Daniels on Lauri Markkanen? I don't think so. So I think he could have a decent game here for sure. Total-wise, I think both these teams can run, and they don't have great defenses. I'd feel silly to sit at an under, so I'm going to lean towards the over. All right, Denver taking on the Celtics. Now, I am doing my best, I'll tell you right now, doing my best to not be biased in this one. And even the people being like, you're so super biased with the Celtics against OKC, those are people that just box score watched. If you watch that game, the Celtics were in that game and winning that game, and the Celtics lost that game against OKC just as much as OKC won it. So I still when you have plays and it's like some you feel like are a terrible read and you're like, damn, why did I do that? And then there's other plays where you're like, I guess I would do the same thing over again because I feel like it was the right read, just not the right result. That was one of those for the Celtics. So that really wasn't a biased play on my part. Obviously, I'm going to be partial towards the Celtics, but the way that game game played out obviously made that Celtics money line and Celtics plus 5.5 look okay against OKC. So there's my story. I'm sticking to it. Put me on the stand, I'd say the same thing. But now we have Denver taking on Boston, which obviously should be a good matchup for a multitude of reasons. So we'll start with the reason why Denver may have some success here. One, they're playing good basketball, right? They've won 4 of their last 5 games. Yes, they've beat Utah, Detroit, Atlanta, San Antonio. Like, they haven't played the toughest of schedules, but nonetheless, we got to give them credit for doing that, right? Russell Westbrook coming into the starting lineup has worked for them. So there's that. And you throw in the fact that, in fact, I could probably show you better than I could tell you. You throw in the fact that the Celtics, don't necessarily have the best paint defense. Now, there's a couple things to note here. So here we go, 18th on the season, right? You think that that's bad, and I've been saying all year long that's how you attack the Celtics. As long as Kristaps Porzingis, which looks like he is healthy here, they've actually been one of the better interior defenses, so you could take it one of two ways. I would sit here and say, okay, well, Denver still is going to be able to score on the Celtics because, yes, they've been better, but they have Jokic down there, right? So that's probably the path to success. But the overwhelming sort of thing that makes me lean towards the Celtics -6 is going to be two different things. Celtics, obviously, we know they're going to shoot a bunch of threes and make a bunch of threes. Denver has not been all that tremendous at preventing three-pointers so far this season, so point in favor of the Celtics, right? And then we look at the isolation stats, which is something new we've added to the dashboard here, which I think is really, really cool. This Celtics team, 4th most frequency on the season in terms of isolation plays, effective field goal percentage 2nd, and then their score percentage. How often do they score off of isolation plays? I believe it includes foul shots as well. 2nd. This is a defense in Denver that's kind of middle of the pack now. They prevent scoring, but effective field goal percentage is kind of middle of the pack. You can flip it, and you can see it right here. You can make the same exact argument for Denver overall, right? But the one thing, because they're great at effective scoring and also its score percentage, the one thing I'll say, look at this, 3rd in terms of frequency, 3rd fewest. So they do not isolate, and teams against the Celtics only 29th. They don't isolate either. So it's not like this Denver team is going to take the Celtics one-on-one, which may be a path to some success because the Celtics are right there, middle of the pack defensively. So I think this points to the Celtics for many reasons. I think that they're going to be able to shoot the 3 effectively, which if the Celtics can shoot the 3, it's almost like the breakdown should stop there, right? Give me some threes from the Celtics, and then also if they do choose to get some nice buckets and take it off the dribble and isolate, I think they'll be able to score on Denver as well. Whereas Denver, maybe it's in the game plan that would favor them. They can do that against the Celtics as well. It doesn't look like that's something that they're doing very, very often. So yeah, give me the Celtics -6 points. This total is a little bit too high for me. Denver plays at a high pace, but we've seen the Celtics in some games so far this year where they have big games, right? And even just look at their last couple against Houston, against OKC. They're not scoring a boatload of points. And Denver this year, I mean, yeah, their offense has started to kick it into gear. They've been playing fast paced, but overall, I don't think that they're going to go out there and say, oh, the name of the game is to try and keep up with the Celtics scoring. They're probably going to try their best to prevent the Celtics from scoring, right? Like, that would make the most amount of sense. You do not want to get in a shootout with the Celtics. You want to try and make them miss their shots. So under 235.5 is definitely a spot that I'm considering here as well. From a player prop perspective, I do have a couple. I would target guys on the perimeter here for the Celtics. So you're looking at Derek White, maybe even a Peyton Pritchard. Look, Jason Tatum's line's going to be very, very high. On the dashboard, you can see that Denver is not all that tremendous against mid-range and corner threes. So maybe an Al Horford look. He's going to get some of those driving kicks, as well as Jaylen Brown. I already mentioned the isolation numbers and whatnot, right? Jaylen Brown could have some success against this Denver team, kind of taking it into the paint. And if he doesn't get into the paint, like, how about the idea of some of those pull-ups, right? So yeah, this could be a spot in which I don't mind a Jaylen Brown look either. The way that he's going to score is scoring in the paint and from the mid-range, and like I just mentioned, anywhere inside, anywhere in the mid-range is going to be a good look for, Jaylen. So that could be a look as well, but I think I might say Celtics minus the points and under trump any player props in this spot. All right, next up, we have Golden State taking on Miami. Like I said, it's kind of a weird slate, guys. You could tell a lot of these spots, and like I say, I don't fake confidence for content. So someone's probably commenting, watching for the first time, being like, seems like you're on the fence about a couple of these games. Correct. Someone's got to say it here on YouTube, right? I can't act like I'm totally confident in everything that I'm talking about, but I love talking about sports, and we like to go through each and every game. So hopefully you guys are picking up on that. But obviously all the ones that I'm actually confident in will be on the Guy Boston Sports site absolutely free. Link in the pinned comment. But let's get into this one. This is one, I mentioned that because this is one where I'm kind of indifferent about. Like, this Miami team, I said I was in full-fledged fade Miami mode, right? Which has now worked out. Since that Jimmy Butler thing, they lost to the Jazz, and they were 9-point favorites. They lost to the Jazz by 36. They lost outright as 9-point favorites. Tough look. They then lose to Sacramento. What was that? Was that yesterday, right? Miami played Sacramento yesterday, so on their back-to-back. They lose to Sacramento by, I think it was 5. They're a 4-point dog, so they lose against the spread there. Golden State, 9.5 points seems like it's too much. It seems like the books kind of caught up to this fade Miami thing, so I'm in a weird predicament here thinking that, yeah, I just want to fade Miami over and over again, but 9.5 points for a Golden State team that we can very much say does not have everything figured out. I'll sound the psycho alert alarm here. I think this is a closer game than it looks. If Miami gives up on this one, then it's clear what we can do moving forward, right? Until Jimmy Butler's moved or until we have any news there, it's clear that we can kind of fade Miami, but Miami plus the 9.5 points here. That's way too many points, in my opinion, to be giving a golden or to be laying as a Golden State team that certainly does not have it figured out as of right now, right? Like, it just does not make sense. Even in the dashboard, there's a couple things to note. The way that we'd want to attack Miami is probably getting it into the paint, right? Well, Golden State doesn't like to do that. Miami, yes, they'll probably lose the rebounding battle, but everything else, their defensive efficiency, they're technically more of an efficient offense this year, better defense overall. Like, there is paths to say this team is going to keep it close. Even look at this offense, right? Like, okay, well, Miami, actually, their most frequent spot is in the paint outside of the restricted area. Golden State's defense, that's one of their worst spots in terms of preventing it, 48.7%. Mid-range, right? Golden State does not look like they're all that tremendous. Golden State also starting to not cover the perimeter well. 38.8% field goal percentage again. So it's like both these teams should be able to score, as crazy as it is to say. So I like Miami to keep this one closer than double digits, and also a lean towards the over 218. Is that crazy? I like the over in this game because if Golden State's said to be 10-point favorites in this one, right, then that means that, you know, whoever's setting these lines thinks that their offense should be firing on all cylinders. That means points. And if Miami, I believe they can keep this game close, and they're going to have to keep up with a Golden State team that is scoring. So, yeah, screw it. Give me the over here, 218 in this spot. No major player props that I'm loving. Definitely not on the Miami side of things, even though I mentioned a couple spots that do look good for this this squad. Like I mentioned, you know, in the paint, in the mid-range. I guess if you wanted to take that and run with it, you'd be looking at definitely, you know, Bam Adebayo. But overall, I don't necessarily love it because you look at this Golden State team, in fact, right here, right, defense first. There's no, like, gaping holes for players against them. Like, they've been pretty sound defensively. So no player props that I'm loving. If anything, Bam Adebayo, but I doubt you see that in the final plays, unless I find a little nugget that I'm liking even more. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Like I said, weird slate, but there's a couple spots in there that I'm liking. After a positive night last night, I'm not going to force anything. We were on a little bit of a cold streak where, you know what, it's like if we just put our finger to our hand here and it would stick because it's so cold, like sticking your tongue on the telephone pole in that Christmas movie. But nonetheless, rambling at this point, guys. Appreciate you for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.